300 years of research came down to this single moment. Terran stared at the holographic display floating above his workstation, watching the final data compile itself into neat rows of conclusions. Around him, the research facility hummed with quiet efficiency, its corridors empty at this late hour. Most of his colleagues had retired to their quarters, but Terran couldn't sleep. Not when they were so close to solving the mystery that had consumed the Galactic Coalition's finest minds for 3 centuries. Earth. The blue and green jewel spinning peacefully in the display before him. Such a beautiful world, yet so confusing. When the Coalition had first detected radio signals from this distant planet, they had followed standard protocol. Observe but do not interfere. Study the dominant species before making contact. Simple enough. Or so they had thought. Except Earth refused to be simple. Every other world the Coalition had encountered followed predictable patterns. The dominant species was obvious. They built the cities, created the technology, and shaped their environment. But Earth presented a puzzle that had stumped researchers for generations. Yes, there were beings that called themselves humans. They certainly built impressive structures and developed increasingly sophisticated technology. But the more the Coalition studied Earth, the less sense it made. Terran pulled up another file, this one showing a massive creature gliding through dark waters. The great white shark, apex predator of Earth's oceans, unchanged by evolution for over 400 million years. Perfect design, perfect hunter. The data was overwhelming. Bite force that could crush bone, electroreception that detected heartbeats from miles away, speed, power, and hunting instincts refined across eons. You're still here? Lyra's voice made him turn. His junior researcher stood in the doorway holding a datapad against her chest. Couldn't sleep, Terran admitted. Tomorrow we present our findings to the Council. 300 years of observation and we finally have the answer. Lyra stepped closer, her expression uncertain. She was young, barely 50 cycles old, and this was her first major assignment. Chief Terran, I've been reviewing the cultural data again. The humans have this entertainment medium they call movies. In many of them, the sharks are portrayed as antagonists, threats. Why would a servant species create stories where their masters are villains? Terran had heard this argument before. He pulled up a new display, showing humans swimming alongside sharks, humans feeding sharks, humans building massive aquariums to house sharks. Look closer, Lyra. They're not portraying them as villains. They're showing respect. Fear, yes, but fear born of reverence. Ancient human cultures worshipped these creatures. They still do, in their own way. These movies you mentioned, they showcase the shark's power. They remind humans of their place in the natural order. But the humans kill sharks, Lyra protested. We have documented thousands of cases. Culling, Terran explained patiently. Population control. Even on our own world, servant species sometimes must manage the numbers of their superiors to maintain balance. It's not unprecedented. He gestured to the data streams flowing across multiple screens. Consider the evidence objectively. Sharks have survived 5 mass extinction events. Humans have existed for barely 300,000 years. Sharks are found in every ocean on the planet. They require no tools, no technology. They are perfectly adapted to their environment. Lyra nodded slowly, but Terran could see doubt lingering in her eyes. Young researchers often struggled with complex sociological structures. She would understand in time. The door opened again, and Commander Breck entered. The military liaison was an imposing figure, his uniform crisp despite the late hour. Terran, I've been reviewing your contact protocols. You're certain about this approach? Absolutely. Terran brought up a new schematic showing the specially designed submarines the contact team would use. We've equipped the vessels with acoustic communication arrays, calibrated to match shark echolocation patterns. Our linguistic team has developed a basic greeting sequence based on shark body language and electrical field modulation. Breck studied the design with a critical eye. And if the sharks prove hostile? They won't be, Terran said confidently. We're not prey. We're coming in peace, offering technology and knowledge. Once we establish communication with the true rulers of Earth, the humans will facilitate further contact. It's in everyone's best interest. The humans might resist, Breck pointed out. They may not want to give up the illusion of control. Terran shook his head. Our anthropological data suggests humans are highly cooperative when properly motivated. They'll see the benefit of joining the Galactic Coalition. Access to new worlds, advanced medicine, faster than light travel. They'd be foolish to resist, and our observations indicate they're quite intelligent for a caretaker species. Breck grunted noncommittally. Military types always worried about worst-case scenarios. It was their nature. Lyra spoke up again, her voice quiet. Chief Terran, what if we're wrong? What if the humans are the dominant species? The room fell silent. Terran turned to face his junior researcher fully, keeping his expression neutral despite the frustration rising in his chest. Lyra, we've been over this. Dominance isn't determined by tool use alone. By that logic, we'd have to consider every species that builds a nest or uses a stick to be dominant. True apex predators don't need tools. They are the tools. Evolution has perfected them. He pulled up a comparison chart, human anatomy on one side, shark anatomy on the other. Humans are fragile. Soft skin that tears easily. No natural weapons, no armor. They can't survive in water without artificial aids. They can't even regulate their own body temperature effectively. Meanwhile, sharks are swimming perfection. They've barely changed in 400 million years because they don't need to change. They're already perfect. Lyra looked at the comparison, then back to her data pad. She said nothing more, but Terran could see the doubt hadn't entirely left her expression. Get some rest, he told her kindly. Both of you. Tomorrow we make history. The Council will approve our contact mission, and in 6 months we'll make first contact with Earth's true rulers. The Galactic Coalition will welcome a new member species, and humanity will finally understand their place in the greater cosmos. After they left, Terran remained alone with his data. He pulled up one final image. A great white shark breaching the ocean surface, water cascading off its scarred hide, jaws open to reveal rows of serrated teeth. Magnificent. Terrifying. Perfect. Tomorrow, the galaxy would finally understand Earth's greatest secret. Tomorrow, everything would change. He just didn't realize how right he was. 6 months of preparation evaporated in exactly 47 seconds. That was how long it took for the great white shark to decide the Coalition submarine looked like prey and attack it with the full force of millions of years of evolutionary refinement. Terran grabbed the console as the vessel lurched sideways, alarms shrieking through the cramped interior. Through the reinforced viewing port, he watched the massive predator circle back for another pass, its dark eye reflecting the submarine's exterior lights. Deploy the greeting sequence, he shouted over the noise. Now! The communications officer, a nervous young recruit named Pell, frantically worked his controls. The submarine's speakers emitted a series of low-frequency pulses, carefully calculated to match shark communication patterns. Terran had spent months developing this sequence with the Coalition's best linguistic experts. The shark rammed them again, harder this time. Something cracked in the hull. Water began to spray from a seam near the rear compartment. It's not working, Pell reported, his voice climbing toward panic. The creature is ignoring our hails. Recalibrate, Terran ordered, refusing to accept failure. Try the secondary greeting pattern. Through the viewing port, he saw something that made his blood run cold. More sharks were approaching, drawn by the commotion. Not just one or two, dozens. Their sleek forms materialized out of the murky depths like ghosts. Chief Terran, the pilot said, her voice strained. I recommend we surface. The hull won't take much more of this, no. Terran slammed his fist against the console. We're so close. If we can just establish communication, another impact. This time something exploded in the rear compartment, filling the submarine with acrid smoke. Emergency lights flickered on, bathing everything in red. Surfacing now, the pilot announced, already executing the maneuver without waiting for approval. The submarine shot upward, leaving the confused sharks behind. Terran slumped against his station, watching 300 years of research spiral away into the depths. They had been so certain. The data had been so clear. They broke the surface with enough force to send everyone stumbling. Terran barely had time to catch his breath before Pell shouted another warning. Surface vessels approaching. Multiple contacts. They're moving fast. Through the upper viewing port, Terran saw them. Human ships painted gray and bristling with equipment he didn't recognize. Military vessels, he realized. Of course the humans would have a military presence. They needed to protect their masters from threats. Open a communication channel, Terran ordered, straightening his uniform. We'll explain the situation to them. They'll understand. The largest human ship pulled alongside their damaged submarine. Figures appeared on its deck, wearing identical uniforms and carrying what looked like weapons. Terran felt a moment of unease but pushed it aside. This was first contact. Some caution from the humans was to be expected. A voice crackled over their communication system, speaking one of Earth's dominant languages. The translation software kicked in immediately. Unidentified vessel, this is Captain Owen Reed of the Australian Royal Navy. You are in restricted waters. Identify yourself immediately. Terran activated the communicator. Greetings, Captain Reed. I am Chief Xenobiologist Terran of the Galactic Coalition. We come in peace and request an audience with Earth's dominant species. There was a long pause. When the human spoke again, his voice carried a note of confusion. You're speaking to them. I am a representative of Earth's dominant species, humanity. I understand your confusion, Terran said patiently, but we need to speak with the actual rulers of your world. The apex predators, the sharks. Another pause, longer this time. Terran could hear muffled voices on the other end. Humans talking to each other in rapid, bewildered tones. Did you just say you want to speak with sharks? Captain Reed asked finally. Yes, of course. We've been observing your world for 300 years. We know the truth about Earth's power structure. Please, we mean no disrespect to humanity. You've been excellent caretakers, but we need to establish formal diplomatic relations with the true dominant species. More muffled conversation. Then a new voice came over the line. Female this time, speaking quickly. This is Dr. Alice Wright, marine biologist. Are you seriously telling me you think sharks are the dominant species on Earth? We don't think it, Terran replied, his confidence wavering slightly at the disbelief in her voice. We know it. We have 300 years of observational data. Sharks are the apex predators of your world. They've existed for over 400 million years. They're perfectly evolved hunters. They're fish, Dr. Wright interrupted. Very successful fish, granted, but just fish. Humans are the dominant species. We built the cities you can see from space. We created the radio signals you detected. We put footprints on our moon and robots on our neighboring planets. Not sharks. Humans. Terran felt the first real stirrings of doubt. The conviction in her voice was absolute, but the data was so clear. Sharks were superior in every measurable way. Unless... This is exactly what we expected, he said, more to himself than to the humans. A servant species developing an inflated sense of its own importance. It's actually quite common in caretaker relationships. You've done such a good job managing the planet that you've begun to see yourselves as the rulers rather than the administrators. Mate, Captain Reed's voice returned, now carrying an edge of irritation. I don't know what kind of research you've been doing, but I can absolutely guarantee you that humans run this planet. Sharks are animals. We study them, we protect them, we manage their populations. Some idiots even hunt them. They don't rule anything. You hunt them? Terran felt his world tilting. You hunt your own rulers? They're not our rulers, both humans said simultaneously. A new alarm began beeping on the console. Pell looked up from his station, his face pale. Chief Terran, we have incoming vessels. Human military ships from multiple nations. Hundreds of them. And something else? Satellites are repositioning. Weapon systems are activating worldwide. What? Terran stared at his displays in disbelief. This wasn't how first contact was supposed to go. This wasn't in any of the protocols. Captain Reed's voice came through again, harder now. You've entered our waters without permission in an unknown vessel of obvious extraterrestrial origin. Half the militaries on Earth are going to DEFCON 2 right now. I strongly suggest you come aboard my ship peacefully and explain yourselves before the situation gets worse. You can't make demands of us, Terran protested weakly. We're here to speak with your superiors. The sharks. We must speak with the sharks. The sharks can't bloody speak, Dr. Wright shouted, her professional composure cracking. They're fish. They have brains the size of a fist. They can't negotiate treaties or join your coalition or whatever the hell you're talking about. Humans are the intelligent species here. Us, not the damn sharks. Terran looked at Lyra, who had been silent throughout the exchange. She met his eyes and said quietly, I tried to tell you. Commander Breck appeared on the internal communication screen from the secondary submarine that had surfaced 100 meters away. Terran, we need to abort this mission. We're surrounded by human military vessels. They're not acting like a servant species. They're acting like we've invaded their territory. Through the viewing port, Terran could see more human ships arriving every minute, sleek vessels cutting through the waves, aircraft circling overhead, all of them focused on the two coalition submarines with an intensity that made his skin crawl. We're coming aboard, he said finally. the words tasting like ashes in his mouth. "We accept your offer, Captain Reed, but I maintain that there has been a misunderstanding. Once we explain our research to your leadership, they'll understand." "The sharks, forget the sharks," Dr. Wright yelled. "Please just forget the sharks." As the coalition team prepared to transfer to the human vessel, Terran clutched his data pad containing 300 years of research. Somewhere in all that data there had to be an explanation, some piece of evidence that would make the humans understand. He refused to believe that the coalition could be so fundamentally wrong, refused to believe it right up until he stepped onto the deck of the human ship and saw the way they all looked at him, not with reverence or deference, with pity. The United Nations building had stood in New York for nearly 2 centuries, hosting countless debates, negotiations, and diplomatic crises. But never anything quite like this. Terran stood before the General Assembly, his presentation hovering in holographic splendor above the floor, while representatives from 193 nations stared at him with expressions ranging from confusion to outright anger. "As you can see from this data," Terran continued, desperately maintaining his professional composure, "the great white shark demonstrates every characteristic of a dominant species. Longevity of evolutionary design, superior hunting capabilities, and most importantly, widespread cultural significance in human society." He gestured to a new image, ancient human artwork depicting sharks, modern human films featuring sharks, even human fashion incorporating shark imagery. "You celebrate them. You fear them. You dedicate enormous resources to studying and protecting them. These are not the behaviors of a dominant species toward simple animals. These are the behaviors of servants toward masters." Secretary General Park, a middle-aged human woman with steel-gray hair and an expression of infinite patience, leaned forward in her seat. "Mr. Terran, with all due respect to your 300 years of research, I can assure you that sharks are not in charge of Earth. Humans are." "Then explain this." Terran pulled up financial records. "Your species spends billions of currency units annually on shark conservation. You create protected zones where sharks cannot be disturbed. You pass laws specifically to ensure their survival. Why would a dominant species subordinate its own needs to another species unless that species held authority?" Dr. Henry Oakes, an anthropologist sitting in the expert panel, raised his hand. "May I?" Secretary Park nodded. "Mr. Terran," Dr. Oakes said gently, "humans also spend billions protecting pandas, elephants, butterflies, and thousands of other species. We call it conservation biology. We do it because we've come to understand that biodiversity is valuable, that we have a responsibility to the planet we've come to dominate. It's not servitude. It's stewardship." "Exactly." Terran pounced on the word. "Stewardship. You're stewards of the planet on behalf of its true rulers." A representative from Australia stood up, his face red. "Mate, I watched a documentary last week about shark finning. Do you know what that is? Humans catch sharks, cut off their fins for soup, and throw the bodies back in the ocean to die. Does that sound like something servants do to their masters?" Terran felt his certainty waver but pushed forward. "Rebellion. Servant species sometimes rebel against natural order. It's regrettable but not unprecedented." "It's not rebellion," Secretary Park said, her patience clearly wearing thin. "It's cruelty, and we're trying to stop it. But it proves the point. Humans have the power to drive sharks to extinction if we choose. We're choosing not to, because we're finally learning to be better than that. But make no mistake, the choice is ours, not theirs." Lyra, sitting beside Terran, whispered urgently, "Chief, maybe we should reconsider our position." "No," Terran hissed back. "The data is clear." Commander Breck, sitting in the back of the chamber, looked increasingly uncomfortable. He had already filed 3 separate reports to the Coalition fleet, each one more uncertain than the last. Secretary Park stood, commanding the attention of the entire chamber. "Let me make this absolutely clear. I am going to demonstrate human dominance in terms you cannot dispute." She nodded to an aide, who activated a new display. Images flooded the holographic space, human cities sprawling across continents, farms covering vast stretches of land, highways cutting through wilderness, dams redirecting entire rivers. We have reshaped this planet to suit our needs. We have eliminated entire forests, drained wetlands, and altered the very composition of the atmosphere. For better or worse, Earth bears the mark of humanity in every ecosystem. More images. Extinct species, their disappearance directly linked to human activity. We have driven hundreds of species to extinction, Mr. Terran. Not because they defeated us in combat, but because we destroyed their habitats without even noticing. Does that sound like a caretaker species to you? Terran tried to interrupt, but she continued relentlessly. We split the atom and created weapons that can destroy entire cities in seconds. We have enough nuclear weapons to render Earth uninhabitable. We've sent probes beyond our solar system and landed robots on other planets. We've mapped the human genome and created artificial intelligence. We've built machines that can think, tools that can kill from thousands of miles away, and vessels that can cross oceans in hours. She paused, letting the weight of her words sink in. And you think we answer to fish? The chamber erupted in murmurs. Terran felt his carefully constructed worldview crumbling around him. Dr. Alice Wright, who had been brought in from Australia, stood to speak. Mr. Terran, I've dedicated my life to studying sharks. I love them. They're magnificent creatures that deserve our protection and respect, but they're not intelligent in the way you're suggesting. They can't build cities or negotiate treaties. They don't have language or culture in any meaningful sense. They're successful predators, yes, but predation alone doesn't equal dominance. She activated a new presentation, showing brain scans. This is a shark brain. This is a human brain. The difference in complexity is staggering. Humans have larger brains relative to body size, more developed prefrontal cortexes and neural structures that allow for abstract thinking, planning, and complex social organization. Sharks have none of this. Terran stared at the scans. How had the Coalition missed this? He pulled up his own data, looking for the comparative neurology files, and felt his stomach drop. They had never done a detailed brain comparison. They had assumed that physical dominance equated to overall dominance. Furthermore, Dr. Wright continued, let me show you what happens when humans decide a shark is a threat. The holographic display showed footage of a beach. A shark had apparently attacked a swimmer. Within hours, humans had deployed boats, helicopters, and divers. They tracked the shark, captured it, and relocated it to a different area. The entire operation was coordinated, efficient, and executed with technology the shark couldn't even comprehend. We didn't ask the shark's permission, Dr. Wright said quietly. We didn't negotiate with it. We identified a problem and solved it using tools, teamwork, and intelligence. That's what dominant species do. Terran sat down heavily. Lyra placed a hand on his shoulder, her expression sympathetic. Secretary Park addressed him directly. Mr. Terran, I understand you've spent 3 centuries observing Earth, but you were looking for the wrong things. You looked for physical power, for evolutionary perfection, for natural weapons. You didn't look for intelligence, adaptability, or the willingness to completely reshape an environment to suit our needs. She pulled up one final image, a restaurant menu. Terran stared at it in horror. This, Secretary Park said, is a menu from a restaurant in Hong Kong, that item right there. Shark fin soup. It's a delicacy in some cultures. Humans catch sharks, kill them, and eat them. We're actually trying to ban the practice because it's driving some species toward extinction. But the point remains. We eat sharks, Mr. Terran. Not occasionally, not in desperate survival situations. Some humans consider sharks a delicacy. The chamber fell silent. Terran felt 300 years of research crashing down around his ears. Does that answer your question about who is the apex predator? Secretary Park asked. Terran couldn't speak. Beside him, Lyra pulled out her datapad and began writing frantically. Commander Breck approached from the back of the chamber. Secretary Park, I believe we need to request a recess. The Coalition needs to reassess our understanding of Earth's dominant species. Granted, she said, take all the time you need. But understand this. Humanity is willing to establish diplomatic relations with the Galactic Coalition. We're excited about the possibility of joining a larger galactic community, but we will only do so as equals, as the legitimate representatives of Earth, not as caretakers awaiting permission from sharks. As the chamber emptied, Terran remained seated, staring at his 300 years of useless data. I tried to tell you, Lyra said softly. I know, Terran whispered. I know. Lyra's presentation to the Emergency Coalition Council lasted 4 hours. When she finished, the silence in the council chamber stretched so long that she wondered if the transmission had failed. 7 species from across the galaxy stared at her through holographic projectors, their expressions ranging from disbelief to horror. Council Prime Wellen, an elderly statesman whose species had founded the Coalition 2,000 years ago, finally spoke. Let me ensure I understand correctly. Humans are not a caretaker species. They are the apex predator of Earth. Yes, Council Prime, Lyra confirmed, her voice steady despite her nervousness. Chief Terran and I have spent the past week reviewing all available data with human experts. The evidence is overwhelming. Show us. Wellen commanded. Lyra activated the first file. Humans evolved as persistence hunters. Unlike most predators who rely on speed or strength for quick kills, humans developed the ability to track prey over enormous distances, sometimes for days, until the prey literally died of exhaustion. No other Earth species can match human endurance over long distances. She pulled up footage of human marathon runners, soldiers marching for days with heavy equipment, explorers trekking across frozen wastelands. They don't have claws or fangs, but they have something far more dangerous. Stamina, determination, the refusal to give up. Another council member, Salus of the Oceanic Breath People, leaned forward. But surely this is offset by their physical weakness. The reports indicate they lack natural armor, weapons, or significant size. That's what we thought, Lyra said. That's what Chief Terran thought. We were wrong. She activated a new file, and the council chamber filled with images of human military technology. Humans don't need natural weapons. They create them. And unlike tools created by other species, human weapons are designed for one purpose: to kill as efficiently as possible. The images cycled through human history: stone spears giving way to bronze swords, then steel blades, then firearms, then missiles, then nuclear weapons. In just 10,000 years, humans progressed from throwing rocks to creating weapons that can destroy their entire planet. Their technological advancement is exponential. Terran, sitting beside Lyra, spoke for the first time. His voice was hollow, defeated. Council members, I have reviewed historical records from every coalition member species. None of you developed weapons technology at this pace. None of you created tools specifically designed to kill your own species in such vast quantities. He activated a file showing human warfare, battles involving thousands of soldiers, cities reduced to rubble, landscapes scarred by conflict. Humans don't just hunt animals. They hunt each other. They have refined the art of killing over thousands of years, developing tactics, strategies, and technologies that have no purpose except combat. Council Prime Wellen's face had gone pale. How many wars have they fought? Terran consulted his data. Major conflicts, hundreds. Minor skirmishes and battles, tens of thousands. In just the last century, they fought 2 global wars that killed over 70 million of their own species. They call them world wars. 70 million? Salus repeated, her voice faint. Of their own kind? Yes, Lyra confirmed. And here's what truly defines them as apex predators. After killing 70 million of their own in 2 wars, after creating weapons capable of rendering their planet uninhabitable, they didn't destroy themselves. They adapted. They learned. They created international organizations to prevent future wars. They're still violent, still dangerous, but they're also capable of recognizing their own destructive tendencies and attempting to control them. She pulled up human population data. Their numbers are approaching 8 billion. No apex predator in coalition records has ever achieved such population density while maintaining technological civilization. They've conquered every environment on their planet. Deserts, frozen tundras, mountain peaks, even underwater habitats. There is nowhere on Earth that humans haven't tried to colonize. Another council member, Vrex the engineer, spoke up. What about their relationship with other species? You mentioned they hunt sharks. What else do they hunt? Lyra activated a grim file. Everything, Council Member Vrex. They hunt every apex predator on their planet. Bears, lions, wolves, crocodiles, sharks, eagles. Animals that other prey species flee from. Humans hunt for sport. Not for food, not for survival. For entertainment. Images showed human trophy hunters posing with dead predators. They track animals that could kill them with a single bite, and they do it armed only with primitive projectile weapons because they find it challenging. They deliberately make it harder for themselves because the hunt isn't satisfying otherwise. Terran added, We found records of humans hunting the largest animal ever to exist on Earth. The blue whale, massive creatures over 30 meters long. Humans nearly drove them to extinction before deciding to protect them instead. The whales had no defense. Humans simply decided they wanted whale oil, so they took it. Decided to protect them? Wellen asked. Why? Because they chose to, Lyra explained. That's what makes them so dangerous, Council Prime. They have the capacity to destroy but also the capacity to preserve. They make conscious choices about which species live and which die. They play God with their own planet's ecosystem. She activated another file showing human genetic engineering, cloning experiments, and terraforming proposals. They're not content with their planet as it is. They're actively working to change it, to bring back extinct species, to create new ones. They talk casually about terraforming their neighboring planets, making entire worlds suitable for human life. Commander Breck, who had been listening silently from his military ship in Earth orbit, finally spoke. Council members, I must provide a military assessment. Human weapons technology is primitive by our standards, but their tactical thinking is not. I've reviewed their military history. They practice what they call total war, scorched earth policies, mutually assured destruction. They create strategies based on the assumption that if they cannot win, they will ensure their enemy cannot win either. He paused, letting that sink in. They have a saying in one of their languages. If I'm going down, I'm taking you with me. This is not a prey species mentality. This is apex predator thinking at its most extreme. Wayland looked shaken. Are they a threat to the coalition? Unknown, Breck admitted. They're also capable of cooperation, of forming alliances, of working toward common goals. But Council Prime, we must understand what we're dealing with. Most coalition species evolved from prey animals or cooperative herbivores. We built civilizations based on survival through community, through avoiding conflict. Humans did the opposite. They survived by being better predators than anything else on their planet. Lyra pulled up one final piece of evidence. DNA analysis showing human genetic markers. This is the proof we needed, Council Prime. Humans have genetic adaptations for violence. Their bodies produce adrenaline in response to threats, temporarily increasing strength and pain tolerance. They have heightened pattern recognition for detecting threats. Their eyes are forward-facing like all predators, designed for tracking prey. Even their teeth, while not impressive compared to sharks, are designed for both plants and meat. They're omnivores, which means they can survive on almost anything. She zoomed in on brain structure analysis. But most importantly, their brains. Humans have overdeveloped prefrontal cortexes, which gives them the ability to plan, to strategize, to imagine future scenarios and prepare for them. They don't just react to threats. They anticipate them. They prepare for dangers that haven't even occurred yet. They imagine ways to kill things that haven't tried to kill them yet, Taryn added bleakly. They call it military strategy, threat assessment, paranoia in some cases. But it all stems from the same predatory instinct. Identify potential threats and eliminate them before they become actual threats. Council Prime Welland sat back in his chair, looking older than his considerable years. 300 years we watched them. 300 years and we never realized. We were looking for the wrong signs, Taryn admitted. We looked for physical dominance, for natural weapons, for obvious predatory features. We didn't look for intelligence paired with aggression. Tool use paired with violence. Cooperation paired with warfare. Humans are apex predators not because of what they are physically, but because of what they are mentally. Lyra added one final observation. Council Prime, there's one more thing you need to understand. Humans know what they are. They have stories, myths, and legends about their own capacity for violence. They know they're dangerous, and most of them are trying very hard not to be. Trying? Salas asked. Yes, Lyra confirmed. Trying. Which means the capacity is always there, under the surface, controlled by choice rather than by nature. They choose to be peaceful. But they could choose otherwise. The council chamber fell silent again. Finally, Welland spoke. Send a message to all coalition vessels near Earth. Maintain orbit, but do not approach. Do not engage, and absolutely do not threaten. He looked directly at the camera. We need to reassess everything. News traveled fast across the galaxy, but fear traveled faster. Within 3 days of the Coalition Council's emergency session, every member species knew the truth about Earth. The planet they had been casually observing for 3 centuries wasn't home to a peaceful caretaker species serving aquatic masters. It was home to apex predators who had clawed their way to the top of their food chain through sheer determination and violence. Panic erupted across dozens of worlds. The Breath people, whose aquatic civilization had never experienced predation, immediately voted to cut all contact with Earth. The Mindel, peaceful herbivores who had achieved spaceflight through collective cooperation, began lobbying for a quarantine zone around the entire solar system. Even species that considered themselves brave found themselves uneasy at the thought of welcoming humans into the galactic community. Terran watched it all unfold. From the observation deck of the Coalition research station still orbiting Saturn, below him, the ringed giant turned slowly, oblivious to the chaos spreading across civilized space. Beside him, Lyra reviewed the latest diplomatic communications with a growing sense of dread. The Tervis Collective is calling for a preemptive strike, she reported quietly. They're arguing that humans are too dangerous to be allowed to develop faster than light technology. Terran closed his eyes. That would be genocide. The Coalition has never encountered a species like humans before, Lyra interrupted. Some members are genuinely terrified. Chief Terran. They're prey species looking at perfect predators and seeing their own extinction. Humans aren't interested in hunting other sentient species, Terran protested, though even he could hear the uncertainty in his voice. They've been nothing but cooperative since we made contact. Have they? Lyra pulled up a new report. Human social media has exploded with speculation about the Coalition. Some of it is excited and hopeful, but a significant portion is, she paused, choosing her words carefully, predatory. Humans making jokes about conquering the galaxy, humans creating fictional scenarios about humanity, going to war with aliens. Humans expressing disappointment that we're not hostile because they wanted to show us what we're made of. Terran read through the samples with growing alarm. They were joking, he told himself. Just human humor, dark and violent as it tended to be. But some of the comments didn't sound like jokes. They sounded like eagerness. Commander Breck entered the observation deck, his expression grim. We have a situation. A Coalition merchant vessel was attacked by pirates near the outer edge of Earth's solar system. The ship sent a distress signal before its communications were damaged. Pirates? Terran turned from the viewport. The Cross Raiders? Confirmed, Breck said. 3 ships. They're attempting to board the merchant vessel and take the cargo. Standard pirate tactics, he paused. But here's the problem. Earth detected the distress signal. Lyra looked up sharply. How? Their detection range shouldn't extend that far. Apparently, they've been building more advanced sensors, Breck explained, specifically to monitor Coalition activity in their system. They knew we were watching them for 300 years and it made them paranoid. So they've been watching us back. What are they doing? Terran asked. Breck pulled up a tactical display. They're launching a response fleet. Military vessels heavily armed. They're calling it a rescue mission. To rescue our ship? Lyra asked, surprised. Why would they do that? Unknown, Breck admitted. But our nearest Coalition patrol is 4 hours away. The humans will reach the merchant vessel in less than 1 hour. He looked at Terran. What do we do? Terran stared at the display, watching the human ships accelerate toward the combat zone. They were moving fast, burning fuel at a rate that suggested they had no intention of slowing down for a cautious approach. We observe, he said finally, and we learn what humans do when they encounter a threat. 53 minutes later, Terran wished he had ordered the humans to stand down. The tactical feed from the merchant vessel showed everything. The human fleet dropped out of acceleration with barely any deceleration burn, using velocity as a weapon. Their lead ship rammed straight into one of the pirate vessels, crumpling its hull like paper before continuing onward. The second human ship deployed weapons Terran didn't recognize, cutting through another pirate ship's engines with surgical precision. The third pirate vessel tried to flee. The humans didn't let it. They're pursuing, Lyra whispered, watching the display with wide eyes. The pirates are trying to surrender. Look, they're broadcasting surrender codes. But the humans ignored the surrender. Their ships chased down the fleeing pirate vessel, disabled its engines, and then did something that made Terran's blood run cold. They boarded it. The boarding action lasted 17 minutes. Terran watched in silence as human soldiers wearing armored suits and carrying weapons designed for close combat systematically cleared the pirate ship. The pirates fought back, but they were outmatched. Humans moved through the vessel with practiced efficiency, their tactics suggesting they had done this many times before. When it was over, the pirate crew was in human custody. Their ships were disabled or destroyed, and the Coalition merchant vessel was intact. Commander Breck received the communication first. A human voice, calm and professional. Coalition vessel, this is Captain Owen Reed of the Earth Defense Force. We've neutralized the hostile vessels and secured the area. Your ship is safe. Do you require assistance with repairs? Breck activated the communication channel, his voice carefully neutral. Captain Reed, this is Commander Breck of the Coalition. We appreciate your assistance, though it was not necessary. Our patrol vessels were en route. 4 hours away, Reed replied. We were closer. Seemed like the right thing to do. You destroyed 2 vessels and captured a third, Breck pointed out. The pirates were attempting to surrender. There was a pause. Commander, those pirates fired on us when we approached. They made their choice. We don't take kindly to people shooting at rescue missions. Lyra pulled up data on the brief firefight. The pirates had indeed fired first, though their weapons had been laughably ineffective against human military shielding. The humans had responded with overwhelming force. What will you do with the captured pirates? Terran asked, taking over the communication. We'll turn them over to Coalition authority, Reed said. This is your space, your jurisdiction. We were just helping out a ship in distress. By ramming one of the attackers, Breck said dryly. It was the fastest way to disable them, Reed replied without a hint of apology. We didn't have time for a prolonged engagement. The merchant vessel's hull was breached in 3 places. Another 15 minutes and they would have lost life support. Terran checked the data. Reed was right. The human response, violent as it was, had probably saved the merchant crew's lives. Captain Reed, Terran said slowly, why did you help us? Your government must be aware of the concerns that some coalition members have expressed about humanity. Another pause. When Reed spoke again, his voice carried an edge. We're aware that half the galaxy thinks we're monsters, yes. We're also aware that you spent 300 years watching us without introduction, cataloging our violence and generally treating us like lab specimens. But you know what? That ship out there had people on it. Living beings who were going to die if someone didn't help them. So we helped them. Because that's what you do when someone needs help. Even though we're afraid of you? Lyra asked quietly. Especially then, Reed said. Look, we know what we are. We know our history. We know we're not the peaceful, enlightened species you probably hope to find. But we're not monsters either. We're just human. We can be violent when we need to be, protective when something threatens what we care about, and yeah, sometimes we make mistakes and hurt people we shouldn't. But we're also capable of compassion, cooperation, and sacrifice for strangers. He paused. The galaxy doesn't get to decide if we're worthy of joining the coalition based on our capacity for violence. Every species has that capacity. You want to judge us? Judge us on what we choose to do with that capacity. The communication ended. The human fleet remained in position, guarding the damaged merchant vessel until Coalition patrol ships arrived 3.5 hours later. When the Coalition vessels appeared, the humans transferred the captured pirates without incident, offered detailed reports on the engagement, and then quietly returned to Earth's orbit. They didn't ask for thanks. They didn't demand recognition. They just left. Terran watched them go, his mind churning through implications. The merchant vessel's captain sent a message to the Coalition Council, praising the human response and requesting that Earth be formally thanked for their intervention. But across the galaxy, the response was mixed. Some saw the human action as proof of their cooperative potential. Others saw it as proof of their violence. The debate raged on. In his quarters that night, Terran reviewed the boarding action footage again, studying the way human soldiers moved, the way they communicated, the efficiency of their violence. He noticed something that made him pause the recording. During the boarding action, one of the human soldiers had passed an injured pirate. The pirate had been wounded, no longer a threat. The human had stopped, applied medical aid to stop the bleeding, and then continued clearing the ship. They had shown mercy to an enemy who had tried to kill them. Terran sat back, staring at the frozen image of the human soldier bandaging the pirate's wound, while still holding a weapon in the other hand. What kind of apex predator saves its prey? What kind of species could be so violent and so compassionate at the same time? He didn't have answers, but he was beginning to understand that humanity wasn't a puzzle the Coalition could solve with data and observation. They would have to be understood through interaction, through relationship, through the messy, complicated process of actually getting to know them, and that terrified him almost as much as their capacity for violence. Ambassador Ruth Hall had seen many strange things in her 30 years of diplomatic service, But nothing quite prepared her for the sight of 7 alien species arguing about whether humanity deserved to exist. The debate had been raging for 6 hours in the Coalition Council chambers, broadcast live to dozens of worlds across the galaxy. She sat in the observation gallery with Dr. Alice Wright and Captain Owen Reed, watching their fate be decided by beings who had never even visited Earth. The Tervis representative is calling us genocide waiting to happen. Again, Reed muttered, his jaw tight. That's the 3rd time this session. Let them talk, Ruth said calmly, though her hands were clenched in her lap. Panic makes people say stupid things. They'll calm down. Will they? Alice asked quietly. Because it sounds like some of them want to quarantine Earth permanently. Keep us trapped in our own solar system until we die out or evolve into something less scary. Down on the council floor, Council Prime Wellen called for order. The elderly alien looked exhausted, his skin pale and his movements slow. We have heard arguments for and against Earth's admission to the Coalition. We have reviewed the evidence of human history, human capacity for violence, and human potential for cooperation, but we have not yet heard from humanity itself. He gestured to the observation gallery. Ambassador Hall, would you care to address the council? Ruth stood, smoothing her suit jacket. She had prepared a speech, something diplomatic and reassuring. But as she looked at the faces of the alien council members, some fearful, some curious, some openly hostile, she decided to abandon the script. Council Prime, members of the Galactic Coalition, I'm not going to lie to you, she began. Everything you've discovered about humanity is true. We are violent. We are aggressive. Our history is soaked in blood, much of it belonging to our own species. We have driven other species to extinction. We have created weapons capable of destroying our own world. We have fought wars over resources, over ideology, over religion, over territory, over insults both real and imagined. She saw some of the council members nodding, their expressions vindicated, but she wasn't finished. But you know what else is true? We've also created art that makes people weep with its beauty. We've composed music that transcends language and culture. We've written poetry that captures the essence of existence in a handful of words. We've built hospitals to heal the sick, schools to educate our children, and charities to help the desperate. We've sent probes to the edge of our solar system, carrying messages of peace for anyone who might find them. We've looked up at the stars and dreamed of meeting others like ourselves. She gestured to the chamber around them. You're afraid of us because we're apex predators, because we evolved to hunt, to kill, to survive by being better at violence than anything else on our planet. And yes, that's part of who we are. But it's not all of who we are. Alice Wright stood and joined her. I study sharks for a living. I've dedicated my career to understanding and protecting them. And you want to know the truth about apex predators? They're not inherently evil. They're not monsters. They're survivors. They evolved to fill a specific ecological niche and they do it well. But intelligence changes everything. She activated a holographic display showing Earth's ecosystem. Sharks are apex predators, but they're bound by instinct. They hunt because they must. They kill because they cannot choose otherwise. But humans? We can choose. We evolved as hunters, yes, but we also evolved the capacity to question our own nature, to look at our violent history and say, we can do better than this. Captain Reed stood as well, his military uniform a stark contrast to the diplomatic attire of the others. The Council is worried about what humans might do in the galaxy. What if we bring our wars to your worlds? What if we become conquerors instead of colleagues? Those are valid concerns. But consider this. We know what we're capable of. We've lived with our own violence for our entire history. We know the cost of war better than any prey species ever could. He looked directly at the Tervis representative. You called us genocide waiting to happen. But we've already had genocides on Earth. Multiple times. And each time we've looked at the aftermath in horror and sworn never again. We created international courts to prosecute war crimes. We established rules of warfare to protect civilians. We built weapons with the capacity to destroy ourselves and then chose not to use them for over 80 years. That's not a species that's inevitably violent. That's a species that's learning. Lyra stood from her position at the researchers' table. Council members, I was one of the researchers who studied Earth. I saw the violence in human history and initially dismissed them as primitive and dangerous. But I also saw something else. I saw a species that saves endangered animals even when it costs them resources. I saw humans who risk their own lives to rescue strangers. I saw communities come together after disasters to help each other rebuild. She pulled up data files. In the past century alone, humans have pulled back from the brink of self-destruction multiple times. They've banned chemical weapons, created environmental protections, and established organizations dedicated to international cooperation. Their progress isn't perfect, but it's progress nonetheless. They're evolving socially even faster than they're evolving technologically. Terran stood as well, his expression solemn. Council members, I made a terrible mistake. I spent 300 years observing Earth and learned nothing important because I was looking for the wrong things. I wanted to find a species that fit my preconceptions about civilization. Peaceful, cooperative, non-threatening. But the universe doesn't work that way. Intelligence can arise in any species, even apex predators. Especially apex predators. He gestured to the humans standing in the gallery. These beings scare us because they remind us that survival isn't guaranteed, that the universe can be dangerous, that there are species out there that could threaten us if they chose to. But fear is not a reason to deny them membership in the coalition. Fear is a reason to engage with them, to build relationships to ensure that when they reach the stars in full force, they see us as allies rather than obstacles. Council Prime Wayland raised his hand for silence. We have heard passionate arguments from all sides, but ultimately, we must make a decision based on evidence and precedent. The coalition was founded on principles of cooperation, mutual aid, and peaceful coexistence. The question before us is whether humanity can uphold these principles despite their predatory nature. The merchant ship captain whose vessel had been rescued by humans requested permission to speak. Wayland granted it. Council members, I was there when the pirates attacked. I watched my crew prepare to die because we knew help wouldn't arrive in time. And then the humans came. They didn't hesitate. They didn't debate whether we were worth saving. They didn't calculate the cost-benefit analysis of rescuing a species that fears them. They just came. They fought off the pirates, secured our vessel, provided medical aid to our wounded, and asked for nothing in return. The captain's voice grew stronger. You want to know if humans can uphold coalition principles? They already did. They risked their lives for strangers who had been spying on them for 300 years. If that's not the definition of cooperation and mutual aid, then I don't know what is. The chamber erupted in debate again. Council members argued, shouted, and pleaded their cases. Ruth watched it all, her heart pounding. Everything humanity had dreamed of since first looking up at the stars hung in the balance. Finally, Wellen called for a vote. The question before the council: should humanity be granted provisional membership in the Galactic Coalition with a probationary period of 50 Earth years, during which time their conduct will be evaluated for full membership status? The vote was close. Some species voted no, their fear too great to overcome. Others abstained, unwilling to commit either way. But slowly, more votes came in favor than against. The Breath people, who had initially called for quarantine, voted yes after their representative cited the merchant rescue. The Mindel abstained but indicated they would reconsider after the probationary period. When the final tally was displayed, Ruth felt tears sting her eyes. Humanity had been accepted. Barely and with conditions, but accepted nonetheless. Wellen made the announcement official. Effective immediately, Earth is granted provisional membership in the Galactic Coalition. Humanity will have access to coalition trade networks, information databases, and diplomatic channels. In return, they agree to abide by coalition law, submit to oversight during the probationary period, and work toward full membership status through demonstrated commitment to coalition principles. He looked directly at Ruth. Welcome to the galaxy. Ambassador Hall, don't make us regret this. Ruth smiled, diplomatic and calm despite the emotion churning inside her. We'll do our best, Council Prime. That's all any species can do. Later, in the human quarters on the Coalition station, Ruth, Alice, and Owen celebrated with Terran and Lyra. The atmosphere was cautious but hopeful. 50 years of probation, Owen said, shaking his head. They're really going to be watching us closely. Can you blame them? Alice asked. We're literally their nightmare scenario. Apex predators with spacecraft. Terran raised his glass in a human custom he'd learned. To understanding. May it come faster than the 300 years it took us to realize sharks aren't in charge. Everyone laughed, the tension breaking slightly. Lyra looked at Ruth seriously. Ambassador, what happens now? How do humans plan to approach galactic civilization? Ruth considered the question carefully. The same way we approach everything else. We'll make mistakes. We'll stumble. We'll probably scare a few more species along the way. But we'll also learn, adapt, and hopefully prove that being an apex predator doesn't mean we can't also be good neighbors. She looked out the viewport at Earth, visible as a small blue dot in the distance. We spent our entire history fighting to survive on that planet. Fighting each other, fighting nature, fighting our own worst instincts. Now we have a chance to be something more. To take everything we learned from being apex predators and use it not for conquest, but for protection. Not for destruction, but for preservation. Terran watched the small blue planet with new appreciation. You know what I realized? He said quietly. We spent 300 years studying what we thought was Earth's apex predator. The shark, perfect killing machine, unchanged for millions of years. But we were looking at the wrong kind of perfection. What do you mean? Lyra asked. Sharks are perfect because they don't change. They don't need to. But humans are perfect because they do change. They evolve socially, technologically, morally. They look at their own nature and decide to be better than it. That's not a flaw in an apex predator. That's the ultimate adaptation. He raised his glass again. To humanity, the apex predator that chose to be more than just a predator. To humanity, they all echoed. Outside the viewport, ships from a dozen different coalition species passed by, beginning the work of integrating Earth into the larger galactic community. It wouldn't be easy. 50 years of proving themselves, of overcoming fear and suspicion, of showing the galaxy that humans could be trusted. But as Ruth watched the ships move through space, she felt something she hadn't allowed herself to feel in months. Hope. Humanity had reached the stars not by hiding what they were, but by embracing it and choosing to be better. They were apex predators, yes, but they were also dreamers, builders, and learners. They were capable of terrible violence and profound compassion. They were contradiction and complexity wrapped up in fragile flesh and stubborn determination. They were human, and the galaxy would just have to learn to accept that, all of it.